It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you for being here, as always.
Thank you.
Wow. Already to the 10th.
Yeah. Wow.
Of December. Man, it's just going too quickly.
It is.
It really is.
Christmas is 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Wow.
What happened? Slow it down.
I had to think. When you said it, I paused. I'm like, what day is it? I mean, what day of the week is it?
Yeah.
Okay, here we are on a Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the day right. All right, so here's the latest poll.
Okay.
You had voters were asked the following question. How important is it for Trump to quickly find and deport illegal immigrants with criminal records? All right?
Okay.
69% of respondents said it's important.
Okay.
Let me see. 69% of respondents said it was either very important, 41%, or somewhat important, 28%, to round up and deport illegal immigrants with criminal record backgrounds. So 69% total. While 26% said it was either not very important, 13% not important at all, 6%, I don't know. So you always got to get to that, I don't know.
These people, we've got a lot of questions for them. Always.
But look at this here. So overall, you had 69% overall that it's important.
Yeah.
For Republicans, it was 90%. For independents, it was 68%. For Democrats, it was 50%. Some in the media have suggested that removing criminal illegal immigrants is racist.
Yeah.
That does not appear to be the case. Among Hispanics, for instance, that liberal writer Jonathan Last now wants deported because they're not voting Democrat. Among Hispanics, for instance, 63% agree that it's important to deport criminals, along with 53% of African Americans. Just 31% of Hispanics and 33% of blacks say it's not important. Well, now the next question, okay? Trump is considering to use the U.S. military to deport illegal immigrants. Do you approve or disapprove of this plan? Well, technically, is that question correct? Is he considering using the U.S. military to actually do the deportation, or to
assist,
or to assist in a support role?
Right.
But they won't be the ones deporting them.
Right. I think they've been very clear in using the words supportive role.
All right, but let's take the question the way they asked it, okay?
All right, fine.
Trump is considering the use of U.S. military to deport illegal immigrants. Do you approve or disapprove of the plan? All right?
Yeah.
55% approve. Now, remember, that's inaccurate. If you said to support, to be support for ICE and deportation, it might be more.
Okay.
55% strongly approve or approve. Okay. 37% disapprove. 24% disapprove strongly. So that's one of the things that, you on CNN, the military. Doesn't matter. But that question is not fully accurate. It would be in a...
Yeah, it's not phrased.
Right.
It's not accurate because the premise of the question is wrong.
Right. Let me get here. Finally, they asked the question that dealt specifically with the many sanctuary cities that actively oppose deporting illegal immigrants from within their city borders. The question, many sanctuary city mayors have stated they will not cooperate in deporting illegal immigrants. Do you support or oppose their stance? Uh, 46% support the stance, 45% oppose it. Wow. So only a plurality support. Excuse me. They 46% support the stance to not cooperate. 45% oppose it. So a plurality support sanctuary cities. I don't buy
it. It seems like there's a massive issue with the methodology here.
Yes.
In this poll.
Broken down further, 53% of urban dwellers support the sanctuary mayors, while only 37% oppose them. Support fell in the suburbs, 46% support, 48% oppose, and even further in rural areas, 53% oppose, 36% support the sanctuary mayors. Well, then that gives all the big cities that are screaming about the migrants.
Mm-hmm.
That is right
They've
there.
got leverage right there.
That's your leverage right there.
Yep. Well, and I'm wondering, and I don't know how this could be the case, but I'm wondering how much of this is still abstract versus reality in terms of the enforcement part. There's no doubt in the big cities, because every major city now has become a border town. Everybody's aware of the broken border. But now the enforcement, this part of the enforcement process, how much of it in the minds of those individuals who are supportive of it in those sanctuary cities is still in the abstract. They don't think about the details of what is required or the damaging effects of sanctuary policy. By the way, that Mayor Adams of New York City saw and went to the courts and said, hey, we need you to help us undo this sanctuary city policy that my own party put into place here in New York City. But I do wonder how many of the rank and file, the respondents here, urban dwellers, because again, if we've got, if they're getting at least a plurality that are supportive of this sanctuary policy, how much of that is still living in the abstract? Because the thing is that you don't see when ICE is coming in to enforce the law, when ICE is in a city at any level, the average citizen doesn't see that. They do see like a housing crisis when it comes to illegals or immigrants in general being in their hometown.
Here's the thing. If they will not cooperate with the federal government, should the federal government cut off funding? That if you believe they have the right to do it, fine. If they're not going to cooperate with the federal government to deport, should they lose federal funding?
Right.
That'd be an interesting question to ask.
Right.
Now, it may not go in the way that I think it would go. It might go the opposite way. Well, we don't like the fact of it, but we don't want you to pull the funding because the funding helps me.
Yeah, exactly.
So it may not be what I think on it. But as you can see from the criminal illegal immigrants, it's through the roof. But even with just illegal immigration, forget about the criminal illegal immigrants, the ones that have committed a crime outside of coming into the country illegally, you still saw in a lot of the other polls that it's still over 60%.
Right.
Which is one of the major reasons Trump won. I don't know. I don't like the methodology. I don't like the way they asked the question. I didn't like. Yeah, I agree with you.
There's so many holes here. Yeah. There's so many holes in the methodology of this and the way the questions were phrased. They need to get Eric and Gary on the phone, and we'll get Mr. Mitchell over at Rasmussen to help us out.
Hey, yeah, he'll do the poll correctly.
Exactly. Exactly.
Get him to get Mark in here.
It will be enormously expensive, because we're going to qualify respondents, but we're going to phrase it. We're going to phrase it very thoughtfully, very carefully, to make sure you understand what you're being asked, and also to make sure that, because that is, this is the wrong premise on a couple of these questions. It's on the military thing. Well, that's a false premise. You're not telling the truth as to what they're promoting will happen. And so, again, go in and set the truth. And also, in those questions, you might be informing some of those respondents as to what's actually going on or what could happen in the case of the criminal element in the illegal immigrants and what a danger that is to their city. Again, you have to phrase it properly to make sure that you're getting the response. I don't know what the response would be, but at least you could phrase it accurately, and that needs to be done here. It's really weak methodology here. But we've seen it. It isn't just anecdotal, because the results really were November 5th. What were the two main issues? The border and the economy with inflation. Mm-hmm. And those things were neck and neck, right there at the top, people's lists. So we know how they voted. They voted for the guy who's going to enforce the law, enforce the border, and deport people who already have deportation orders. This is already going to happen. The criminal element should be gone from our nation if they're not here legally. And they're not.
Yeah, there were some polls where that was actually number one over inflation.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Depending on which poll you looked at, they were both. I mean, I'd say tied for number one. If you averaged out all the polls or many of the polls, especially over the last year or two, but that's what you look at, because the sanctuary city policy, quite frankly, that's fine. It doesn't mean ICE can't work in your city. That just means that you'll need more ICE officials in your city to get the job done. You asked a question, though, a few months ago, and I think it's a very good question, and I'm very curious. Oh, well, to what extent are you willing to go to battle for to defend your sanctuary policy? Because at some point you're interfering with the official duties of ICE, and I don't have any doubt that there are some liberals in power in some of these blue cities who would love to play the victim and create more victims.
Wasn't it
trying to stand?
Wasn't it the Denver mayor who said, we're basically going to have, our wall of law enforcement to stop your wall of law enforcement?
Yeah.
And then backed off on that?
Had to back off from it. Yeah. Well, because
really now?
That's how it will play out. It depends on the city and how far they want to go with it, but I'm curious.
Lack of cooperation is a completely different ball game than conspiring and breaking federal law to hide illegal immigrants from authorities.
Right.
And this, the incoming, from what we're told, the incoming Justice Department will prosecute those who do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And then, of course, we did hear from a couple of sheriffs that said, look, in our county, we're going to use our resources to help ICE. We'll do that.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, that doesn't apply to all sheriffs and doesn't apply to all counties. There are some sanctuary counties.
Right. And Holman said, fine, just don't get in our way.
Right. Exactly.
Do whatever you wish to do.
Right.
We believe it's wrong, but we're still going to come in. Instead of sending 500 agents in, we'll send 1,000 in.
Yep.
And that's when it came up after he said that. Believe it was a Denver mayor who said, well, then, expect that that's not going to happen.
Right.
There's not going to be police attempting to stop. Number one, federal agents are not going to come down the road like the British
Yeah, right.
marching
Exactly. Yeah.
down the road in unison,
Right.
while the Minutemen hide
Right.
in the woods picking them off.
Right. Exactly.
It's not going to
Not
happen
going
that
down like
way.
that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's not going to be a civil war, ICE, the U.S. military against
right.
the state mobilizing their National Guard. That's not going to happen.
Denver v. United States.
Wow. Could this be the new plot for Red Dawn?
Right, exactly.
I mean, first it was the Russians, and then they went.
It's an interior invasion. What?
Remember they went to North Korea instead of China.
Yeah.
That was the best for the second Red Dawn. Wow, okay,
Right.
it's North Korea invades us. Come on,
Yeah.
why?
Why?
Because we want to sell this in China.
Right. Yeah. North Korea doesn't have the budget to invade. What are you talking about?
86690 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
The intent and end goal of the recently announced National Milk Testing Strategy, designed to expand monitoring, detection, and response efforts to H5N1 in dairy cattle, according to Julie Gautier of the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service.
We've got 5 stages identified. These aren't necessarily linear. States do not have to move through every stage. There's a lot of flexibility. Ultimately, at the end of this process, we want to be able to declare the United States free of avian influenza in dairy cattle.
Information webinars are also scheduled by APHIS for Tuesday and Wednesday this week by invitation to state animal health officials and dairy regulators to learn more about the National Plant Silo monitoring and sample procedures. The new strategy is the latest effort in a detection and prevention approach, including increased biosecurity and research. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, this is really important. What are they going to do once the Republicans take power? Once they have the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, they're talking about now because you can do reconciliation twice a year, and which means you can pass stuff with just 51 votes.
Right.
And so there's a bunch of stuff they want to get done, including, redoing the tax reform from 2017.
Extending that, yeah.
Extending it, plus adding more.
Right.
And
yeah.
they're like, well, we can't do it all in one. We have to, let's get one done first and the second one done. And there's a controversy on it. We'll tell you what the controversy is coming up.
happy holidays. Have some eggnog. Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Did you hear of any BLM protest outside of New York? I didn't see any.
No.
I didn't see anything come up on Twitter.
No, I didn't see it.
Just the couple of hundred
in New York, yeah.
Yeah. As I said, BLM, bring lots of money.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like...
But that would be they're protesting basically what the jury did in the Daniel Penny trial.
Yeah, and you can't make the case. The first thing I thought when I heard them out there, I go, this is what you're protesting?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to win this one.
No.
I didn't see it happening. I just, it's sort of like there seems to be no interest there seems to be a very, very deflated left right now in this country.
Yeah.
Very deflated.
Right.
It's the expectation that, where's, Biden, how come he isn't celebrating and he's not out there every day telling us about his legacy? How come? Because he's never been out there.
Right.
And Trump's out there looking and sounding like a leader. The imagery is there. He's already traveled. He's got world leaders coming to Vatican South. You like that, don't know when I called it the Vatican earlier.
Mar-a-Lago. It seriously is. It's the perfect name for it.
And he's got the two leaders of liberal media going there to kiss his ring, Joe and Mika. By the way, I did like my imagery of Trump just holding out his hand like that and going
and kind of looking away,
and looking
where he
away,
doesn't look her straight in the eye,
and for Mika, kiss the ring, please. Could you kiss the ring? And then not you, Joe, just Mika. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, just on one knee.
Yeah. Exactly.
And this rage of jealousy from Joe.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, I think I may need some help if those are the kind of things I'm thinking.
Look, it's a fun hobby.
But I mean, threatening. We played it earlier. The one BLM guy out there threatening retaliation, calls for black vigilantes, and we talked about CNN doing the same thing. Compare. Well, these are both vigilantes. Oh my God! I mean, it's going to be interesting. But there seems to be less focus, for example, on national politics, and like I said, even Hegseth. It seems like there isn't. They just don't have. Maybe on some of the TV shows they do, but you just don't in general see it. You just don't in general see a passion right now coming from them. All right, so what about when we get to January 20th? Trump is in. They've got the Senate. They've got the House. What do? Wall Street Journal laid it out here in an article, the GOP's 2025 reconciliation fight. And you're going, what's reconciliation? That sounds complicated. It simply means twice a year. The rules say twice a year you can vote something in the you can vote something in with just 51 votes in the Senate.
Right.
You do not need the 60.
Right.
Or twice you can do it when it comes to funding things.
Right.
And so, as they write here, soon-to-be Senate Majority Leader John Thune wants to jumpstart the Trump presidency by using the first reconciliation to pass the GOP's top priorities: money for border security, increasing energy production, and defense. The goal would be to pass this by early February. I mean, so you're talking about getting in there and getting this thing done in 10 days.
Yeah.
10, 15 days. You want this thing done in 2 weeks.
Right.
This would reserve the much tougher puzzle of tax reform for the second reconciliation bill later in 2025. And as they write, so far, sensible. But some House members, led by led by Ways and Means Committee Chairman Jason Smith, are criticizing this order of legislative battle. They want to write a tax bill first, or perhaps even stuff the first bill with everything: border security, energy, defense, and a rewrite of the 2017 tax reform. CNN reports that Mr. Smith said prior Congresses have failed to pass more than one reconciliation bill in a single year. Why would we think in a 220 to 215 majority that we would ever overperform? Passing anything in the GOP House will be difficult next year, but the question to ask Mr. Smith is why House Republicans think they can rally that sliver of a majority around a giant and complex tax reform in such a short order. That's a recipe for division and delay, even as it risks the GOP getting nothing done at all if it collapses on its own great political weight. A two-step plan allows for a narrow GOP majority to unite around the border, energy, and defense provisions that have broad GOP agreement and may even bring along some House Democrats. Parts of such a bill would come from legislation the House GOP has passed already in the current Congress and that senators have worked on or that Mr. Trump has endorsed on the campaign trail. Mr. Trump is eager to show early progress, and a targeted bill would allow Congress to fund early executive orders on his border and energy promises. He'd have the money to do it. A focused bill is also an easier lift in the first months of Congress when Speaker Mike Johnson's tiny majority will shrink even further as several Republicans resign once they are confirmed for Trump administration posts. That means 2017 to 2015. Mr. Smith is right that a tax bill is essential to pass, but the expiring provisions of the 2017 reform last through the end of 2025. That deadline will concentrate congressional minds, lest the expirations raise taxes on millions of Americans and lowers them on 2 Americans in the election year of 2026.
Please let them expire. I'm Eric Harley, and I
Yes.
approve this message.
Eric and I both want the tax cuts to expire. Now, before you get angry at us,
I don't care if you're
listen to our reasoning.
Yeah, I don't care if you're listening.
When everybody else got a tax cut in 2017, our taxes went up
That's right.
because of provisions in that bill, some business provisions that both Eric and I take. So we had to pay more in taxes after the tax reduction, which led me to one of, I think, and let me pat myself on the back.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the finest things I've ever said.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when Democrats are getting in power. Oh, my God. When Republicans cut taxes, mine went up. What the hell will ever happen if Democrats get in power and decide to raise taxes?
Oh, my gosh.
No, I want them. I want them to do that, among other things, because remember, Trump also wants to cut the corporate tax again.
Right.
That's all part of the tax reform.
Right.
And as they put in there, he goes, Mr. Trump's new tax cuts that he wants, tariffs, corporate handouts, and the overall cost of the bill will be sharp and require time and trade-offs to manage. Tax negotiators are no doubt thinking already about how a bill could be built to get 218 House votes, but we haven't seen any strategy so far that suggests Mr. Smith or anyone else has thought this through. The point is, you've everything else, you already know what you want.
Yeah.
You know what you want on
Right.
defense.
Right.
You know what you want on energy.
Right.
And you know what you want on border security. You know what you want, and you know you can get some Democrat votes, I believe, on this.
Yeah.
So I think you can easily pass that. It makes sense. The fear is nobody's ever been able to move 2 reconciliation bills through in the same year. But I would say right now, I would think that I'm going to guess that Trump is going to say, go with the stuff we can get right now. You got to get.
You want to look. You certainly want to make progress, but you also want to send a message that you're making progress.
Right. If the entire bill, because you're on tax reform, it's one reconciliation bill is taking months and months and months and debate back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, then boom. But if you get the first one through, if you get border security, if you get energy, and you get defense, you've got those three major things that you want. Easy agreement. It goes through in the first couple of weeks. Look at the accomplishments we have. Now we start working on tax reform.
Right. No, I think that has to be the approach.
And it's like, doesn't matter what anybody else did before. We're going to get 2 reconciliation bills done.
Right.
We're going to get them done.
Right.
And if you actually put it off a little while, if you put it off till after April, then all those House elections happen already. You've got the Republicans back in. You've got the 220, 215, not the 217, 215.
Yeah.
And so you've got a little bit more of a buffer at that point
Right.
to get it through the House.
Right.
Because the Senate will have approved it because they're the ones that are doing the reconciliation, or if the House or if you get the 220, 215, the House writes it and then puts it to the Senate, then you've got the the 51 to get it through. So, I said 251, probably. Gary, what country are you talking about?
250, 251, whatever it takes.
I sure would like to get the tax stuff done first. That would be I would want that first.
I would like
because that would help rev the economy. I just don't know, because that kind of tax bill, everything that they want to do.
Oh, there's a number of things that they're talking about. It's not just wish list things, but they are heavy items on this plan. So it is going to be more of a battle. And by the way, you can work on that while you're passing the first one. You can still work on the second one.
Well, the first one could be done, like I said, beginning of February.
Exactly.
You're talking 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's no time.
Right. And
you get that done. You can say we've accomplished this. People want to hear that there's been the border stuff's moving.
Exactly.
And that energy's moving.
Yeah.
Now we've expanded that. And on defense, we've got this straightened out about where we want to go in the world with defense. You've got Hegseth out there and everything else. Those are really, 3 of the important keys. And the next thing is, okay, you're not going to suffer for not getting tax reform done, because it doesn't have to be done until next year.
Right.
Or the end of the end of next year.
Right. As you mentioned, on the first one, you may have some Democrats on board.
Yeah. And so what could you promote it as? The bipartisan Trump bill.
Well, I mean, on defense, Gallego is former military out in Arizona. And on energy, you have to think of Pennsylvania. So you could get Democrat support, and in the House you might have some Democrats too. Look, the tax thing has to move for the economy, and the economy is big. The thing about that is the clock is ticking from day one. January 20th, people are going to expect the 21st they go to the grocery stores and, prices are coming down and their buying power is going up. And it doesn't happen that way, but, the clock is ticking. They want things to move on the economy.
And they say right now there's disputes in the GOP over what they want the corporate tax rate to be, the state and local tax deduction. You and I talked about that, the child tax credit,
right?
Tariffs, all this stuff that they talk about, everything. It requires time and building consensus. And, and coming up with what actually works.
And, part of getting things through sometimes is, okay, we'll put a sunset on it, right? Kick it down the road. We'll have these things now. And, a child tax credit comes to mind. But any of these things, under the 2017 thing, these items, all right, we put a sunset on it and then we'll deal with it later and see if it, or let it expire. Well, the fact of the matter is, on these things, on a lot of these things, you want them to be permanent. That's a much bigger hill to climb.
And the thing is, too, if you throw everything in together and you get nothing.
Yeah, exactly. If you get nowhere.
Then get somewhere, then continue with it. And
exactly.
They've never passed more than 2. Well, we are.
Right, exactly.
And Trump being the leader to push they can get through is what you need.
Yep.
And he wasn't really last time.
Exactly.
In 2016 when they had the opportunity. And he admits that was part of his failure.
Right.
Because he can use now his clout to say, let's get this through.
I think you can.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara along with Eric Harley. I heard you over there talking to the guys. You're still trying to make that case that you were the first person to call Die Hard a Christmas movie?
I said it on the air roughly 20 years ago, maybe less than 20 years ago, because it was right after you started. I started that whole thing. And by the way, it is a Christmas movie. Now everybody knows it. I started that.
You started it.
It's that
you were the
trend
one.
Started with me.
Nobody else said it before you.
Right. No, exactly. Just like I was with Aerosmith for years.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.